Let me set the scene because you're not going to believe how quickly peace and quiet can turn into a three-act circus. Imagine I just left the city behind, packed up after a messy divorce, traded glass towers and lawyers in suits for pine trees and a stubborn Colorado ranch house. All I wanted was silence, nobody knocking, nobody calling, nobody telling me what color to paint my mailbox. Just air sharp with pine dust, and maybe the distant sound of coyotes, not a neighbor's leaf blower at 7 a.m. When I first pulled up, the place felt like a private sanctuary. Out past Denver down a road most people never bother with, sitting just below the foothills where the SWAT range echoes sometimes if you listen real close. 3 acres all mine or so, I thought. The last owners lost it in foreclosure. I picked it up at a court auction, which was poetic since half my career as a property lawyer was untangling messes just like theirs. Now I was living in the fallout, and honestly, I was content. Office in the old guest room, cameras on the fence line, Corten steel panels going up, modern rusted, not exactly blending in, but after everything I wanted something honest and solid. The first week went by with nothing but the sound of wind and the kind of silence that makes you remember what your own thoughts sound like. The second week, little things started happening. An orange cone by the driveway gone, motion camera offline. I shrugged it off. Whether a nosy raccoon, maybe even a bored kid from up the road. Until one morning, boot prints showed up in my garden soil. Too clean, too big, not mine. That night I went through the security footage and nearly spilled my coffee. 2 nights prior, close to midnight, 3 figures eased through the tree line, moving careful, avoiding the lights. Not kids, not random drifters. Too neat, too deliberate. One carried a clipboard, another a tablet. They circled my house, whispering, measuring, poking around. Then I heard a woman's voice, sharp, the kind that doesn't ask, just expects. Measure the boundary to the oak. You'll have to comply once we document the encroachment. Karen Beckett, of course, HOA president. She'd swung by on my first day, leaned out the window of her SUV just long enough to tell me how high their standards were. I'd told her straight up this property wasn't part of Willow Rest HOA. She'd smiled like she was already thinking about where to put the trophy when she won. Now here she was midnight with her board treating my land like their own personal scavenger hunt. Randall, the treasurer, snapped pictures. Molly, the secretary, documented everything on her tablet. They never knocked, never said a word, just trespassed, clicked, measured, and vanished into the trees again. For a second I sat there half pissed, half laughing. Bears, wildfires, trespassers? Sure. But I hadn't counted on the true Colorado apex predator, a suburban HOA on the prowl. But that's not how this story ends, not by a long shot. Screenshots and video clips went into a folder labeled Evidence Trespass. Part of me hoped it was just a weird misunderstanding that Karen would show up with a weak apology and maybe some cookies. Instead, a couple days later, a thick envelope landed in my mailbox. No cheery clip art, just cold legalese. Urgent notice. Willow Rest Homeowners Association. My heart rate ticked up, couldn't help it. 4 pages in Times New Roman. The first line, welcome to the community. Second line, you owe $400 in delinquent dues and maintenance. For what you ask, a narrow strip of grass at the edge of my fence grass I maintained suddenly labeled common ground. The fence was visually disruptive. The carport non-conforming. No plans submitted. The best part, failure to comply would result in fines, enforcement action, and legal proceedings. They even attached photos snapped during their midnight tour. I wasn't new to this dance. Spent 10 minutes prepping my response. Out came the court ruling from 6 years back, signed, sealed, stating in plain English my property was not, is not, and would never be under HOA jurisdiction. County zoning map with my land carved out like a piece of pie. Stapled copies of every exclusion order I could find. Security camera stills, Karen clipboard, Randall's phone, Molly's Honda's plate, parked illegally on my curb, added a formal letter. Any further contact, speak to my lawyer. Complaints have already been filed with the sheriff's office. Drove the packet over myself, dropped it in the HOA mailbox, and let the security camera see me tip my coffee and salute. There's a certain satisfaction in standing your ground. Most people cave or ignore these things, hope they'll go away. Not me. I'm the guy who used to bury HOA boards for a living, just as I started to think things might simmer down. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up. Two deputies, all slow movements and sunglasses like they had all day. Morning officers, I called out, not even pretending to be surprised. Karen Beckett send you? They wanted to talk. Apparently Karen had accused me of sending threatening correspondence. I handed over the paperwork, every letter, every document, every timestamp. The older deputy flipped through it, raised a brow at the nighttime trespass photos. Is this Karen Beckett, HOA president, he asked. That's her. Randall and Molly too. Suddenly the mood shifted. They took my flash drive for the report, thanked me, and left Karen glaring from her driveway, arms crossed, watching like she could shoot daggers. That night, an email came from MG, no greeting. Just, we need to talk. I didn't sign off on that letter. This is going too far. Please don't respond here, M. That's Molly Green's secretary, and if you ask me, the real twist in this story. Remorse, panic didn't matter. Thing is, HOA boards don't collapse from outside lawsuits. They fall apart from the inside when the loyal get scared. But Karen wasn't done yet. A yellow zoning notice taped to my mailbox, potential violation. My carport, the one with perfect paperwork, flagged. 2 days later, an anonymous tip to the Department of Revenue, unregistered commercial activity. The week after, a community enforcement officer came by red in the face, apologizing for multiple noise complaints. I live alone. My loud gathering is when I sneeze 3 times and scare a squirrel off the porch. Now it was death by bureaucracy paper cuts meant to wear me down. The pattern was textbook. All I needed was proof. That's when Molly struck again, this time with PDFs, emails, and message threads. Karen's own words. If he pushes back, hit him with nuisance complaints. Zoning, tax board noise, anything. People like that always slip. We can bury him in process. He can't fight everything. He'll cave. All created from the HOA office computer. I backed up everything, cloud flash drive, sent a copy to a friend in Boulder. 3 complaints filed. 1 to zoning citing harassment. 1 to the state for false tax reporting. 1 to the sheriff's office, evidence of conspiracy attached. The next time I saw Karen at the grocery store, she wouldn't meet my eyes. A week later, I met Molly at a gas station out of town. 2 cars idling, windows cracked. She looked exhausted. Handed me a thumb drive, more emails, more audio, a memo for a fake community vote to retroactively rope my land into the HOA. Karen encouraging the board to coordinate complaints, even templates for anonymous neighbor emails. Audio from a meeting. If we turn the neighborhood against him, he'll either leave or fold. No one wants to live surrounded by enemies. I asked why she was flipping. She threatened me, Molly said. Tried to scare me about my husband's VA claims, but I realized if I stick around, I go down with her. You will, I said, but you testify, you'll land on your feet. 2 weeks later, HOA flyer for a community roundtable. The room was packed, residents, retirees, even folks I'd never seen before. Karen front and center, Randall flanking her, Molly keeping her head down. Karen preached order and shared values, then started in about one homeowner undermining harmony. No names, but everyone knew. I stood up. Are you suggesting someone not in your HOA has to follow your rules? She froze. This is a community issue, she stammered. Except I'm not in your HOA. I have a court ruling. You've seen it. Instead, you've trespassed, sent fake invoices, coordinated false complaints. The room rippled with shock. I held up emails, audio, nodded at Molly, who after a long pause gave the smallest, most devastating nod. Someone whispered, "Is this true?" Karen sputtered, tried to recover, but the room was already tilting away from her. On my way out, I handed her a cease and desist. The next one's from a judge. The lawsuit felt cathartic. Click of the keyboard, thump of the printer case, captions bold as hell. Filed 2 civil suit against the HOA, another against Karen for defamation and malicious prosecution. Served her myself. You're invited to the adult table, I said. She slammed the door. Court set the hearing just 3 weeks later. My evidence package over 200 pages, 77 exhibits, video, emails, audio maps, court orders. Karen's lawyer tried to bluster, objected to his own client's statements. Classic. On the stand, Karen tried some half-baked legal theory. I showed the HOA map with her signature proof she knew the boundaries. Exhibit 52, her email, ways to keep pressure on. The judge, old and crusty, told her flat out, "This isn't overreach, it's vendetta." Court ruled in my favor. Fines, injunctions, restraining orders, bar complaint for Karen. Satisfaction with a side of poetic justice. After the verdict, silence. No more late-night emails, no more patrols. Then Karen stormed into the HOA building for an emergency session. Randall resigned. The rest of the board suspended Karen. The sheriff's office issued a statement about misused emergency calls. Karen's number got flagged. The state bar opened an ethics investigation. And then out of nowhere, a neighbor dropped off a pie pecan still warm. "Thanks for standing up," the note said. "Most of us gave up years ago." More neighbors came by. Quiet gratitude, cautious friendliness. Jules, the new acting president, put out a statement. Third-party oversight, clear jurisdiction. A published exclusion map. My property front and center. Karen's house went up for sale. The listing bragged about strong community leadership. I laughed until I nearly choked. That wasn't why I fought. I didn't need to win. I fought because power left unchecked will always grow claws. Karen wanted control, wanted to make an example of me. In the end, the only example she made was herself. Now the only footsteps on my property are mine, and sometimes a squirrel. But it makes you wonder, when is it right to push back? When does standing your ground become something else overkill? Maybe even a vendetta of your own? Where's the line between protecting what's yours and becoming just as ruthless as the ones you fight? Maybe that's something we all have to figure out for ourselves. So where do you draw that line? Ever gone up against a bully, a board, or a neighbor who just wouldn't quit? Share your story, your thoughts, your version of justice in the comments. Let's see where the real boundaries are drawn.